Welcome everyone. This is the MasterClass. My name is Patricknazareth. I have around 30 years of experience in teaching and I would like to help dispel your doubts should you have any. Today we look at the chapter The Ailing Planet, the Green Movement's Role, written by Nani Palkhivala. Nani Palkhivala, born in 1920 in Bombay, died in 2002. He did his law degree from the Government Law College in Mumbai itself in 1944. He was one of India's premier economists, a jurist and a legendary lawyer. He was a champion of civil liberties and he fought for constitutional rights. He was sent as the ambassador to the USA by the then Janata government. He was also an author. He wrote on economic and environmental issues, which shows us how deeply he was concerned about the future of India. Before we get into this chapter, I would like to point out first that this is an essay. Therefore, there will be no characters who have distinct personalities. There are going to be no plot points like a story. There is a traditional narrative structure, and there are no settings in the fictional sense. Continuing on, Palkhivala writes about the Green Movement which first started in 1972 when it was founded as the Green Party in New Zealand. From that time, it has gone from strength to strength, and the author hopes that we have shifted from simply looking at a mechanistic view of the world, in other words, what we can take from it, how we can exploit it, to one where we understand that we are all bound together and we look at the earth as a whole. This represents a very big shift in the way of thinking. He compares it to Copernicus in the 16th century, who definitively pointed out that it was not the sun which revolved around the earth, but the earth and other planets which revolved around the sun. If we look at the signs of the earth's health, what do they reveal? They reveal that the patient, in this case earth, its health is failing. What do we do about it? We have to be reminded of our ethical obligations. We have to be responsible people who understand that we look after the planet for our generations to come. So we have come up with the idea of sustainable development. This word first came up in 1987 by the World Commission on Environment and Development. What does it focus on? Using the resources of the planet while still understanding the future generations which follow have the same advantages that we did. In other words, they should also be able to enjoy the fruits of the environment. They should also be able to enjoy the earth just like we are enjoying it today. He tells us about a zoo at Lusaka, Zambia. In that zoo, you go in, there's a cage, and on the cage there's a sign. And what does the sign say? The world's most dangerous animal. You are curious, you go to look, and there is a mirror. It reflects you. So whichever person goes to that cage finds himself or herself reflected, which basically means that you should understand that you and me are the most dangerous people on this planet. So how many living species exist over here? Scientists say there are around 1.4 million, but there are very many whom we don't know. Biologists say that around 3 to 100 million other living species still have yet to be discovered. One of the very first international commissions which dealt with this, ecology and environment, was the Brand Commission. It had an Indian on its panel, Mr. L.K. Jha. It asked us a very important question. Are we going to leave our successors simply advancing deserts, landscapes which are denuded, an environment which is toxic? Lester R. Brown wrote a book, The Economic Prospect, and he pointed out that there are basically 4 principal ecosystems: the fisheries, the forests, the grasslands, and the croplands. These 4 together form the foundation of the world's global economy. What do? They supply our food. They supply the raw material for everything except minerals and petroleum-derived synthetics. But the problem is the population is growing. So the human demand on these ecosystems are crossing the limits. When this happens, the entire system will collapse. The fisheries will collapse. The forests will disappear. The grasslands will be converted to deserts, and croplands will no longer be as fertile or productive. Overfishing is common every day because people look for protein. Forests are being cut down to provide fuel for cooking. Some places, firewood is now so expensive that you can jokingly say that what goes under the pot is more expensive than what goes into the pot. As a result of all this, very many species of life are facing extinction. There is a saying that forests precede mankind and deserts follow. In other words, where there were forests, man arrived and has turned those forests into deserts. Previously, the entire earth was covered with tropical forests and forests of other types. Now, we are cutting them down at the rate of 40 to 50 million acres a year. And since the dung of animals are being used as fuel, they can no longer fertilize the soil either. In 2000, which is way behind us, which is almost a quarter century ago, the World Bank thought that at least a 5-fold increase in the rate of forest planting is required, but it simply doesn't happen. In fact, the president of the World Resources Institute has remarked that we thought we were losing forests at the rate of an acre a second, but it is more close to an acre and a half a second. The Constitution of India provides safeguards, Article 48A. Unfortunately, the Constitution in India is neither enforced nor it is respected. To just give an example, casteism, untouchability, bonded labor are supposed to be abolished, but they still flourish in our country so many years after we were independent in 1947. India is losing forest at the rate of 3.7 million acres a year. These areas have been designated as forest areas. In other words, cutting trees is a crime, a punishable offense. But they are virtually treeless. The forests have been cut down mercilessly. In fact, it is estimated that 8 times the official figures are actually what has been destroyed. There was a 3-year study that was done using satellites and aerial photography. This was conducted by the United Nations. And it tells us that the environment has gone down so badly that it is at critical levels in many of the 88 countries investigated. Basic reason, world population. Look at it this way. 1 million years for the world population of mankind to reach 1 billion. Just 100 years later, the second billion happened. Just the 20th century has added 3.7 billion. The present world population, 5.7. Every 4 days, the world population increases by 1 million. How much can the earth sustain? As income rises, as education spreads, as health improves, fertility rates are also falling. Development is actually a good way for population control. But how can you continue developing if we are increasing at such a speedy rate? The effects, the rich get richer. The poor, they have more children. And since everything is so expensive, it condemns them to remain poorer. You could argue that if you have more children, there are more people to work. But in fact, more children means that there is more unemployment. No one is suggesting that compulsory sterilization is done. But why not voluntary family planning? What do we want? A control of our population or the poverty in our land increasing continuously? What is the population of India today then? 920 million according to the author. Currently it is way past a billion. And no one who understands India would understand that most of these people will die hungry because population control is not given priority. We have more people than the entire population of Africa and South America, 2 continents put together. There is a concern, not just that people will not survive, but the planet itself will die. This environmental problem does not necessarily mean that we will all die, but what happens in the future? Shouldn't we have a responsible outlook? We have to learn to see the world as an integrated whole. We have to learn to see the world as one part instead of different parts. The most important role has to be played by industry. Take the example of the chairman of DuPont, one of the biggest multinationals manufacturing chemicals. This gentleman, the chairman, Edgar S. Woolard, declared himself the chief environmental officer as opposed to the chief operating officer. If more companies follow his lead, if more companies understand that environment matters above profit, then perhaps we can leave a better planet for our children. When Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister, she said it beautifully, that no one generation buys this earth. Actually, what we are doing is basically we are renting it. And when we pass away, we must leave it in better condition than what we got it. Or at least, we must give it back to our children the way we found it. Remember Mr. Lester Brown, who wrote the book? We'll close with his words. To paraphrase him, he says that this world is not ours because our parents lived here. We have simply borrowed it from our children. Whether you have them or not is immaterial. You will have children later on in life. And remember, the earth that we are destroying today, will there be any left when our children come of age and we are dead and gone? What are the literary devices used in this essay? Firstly, metaphor. Who is the earth described as? An ailing patient with vital signs, which basically denotes poor health. Symbolism. The mirror in the zoo symbolizes how we as human beings need to look at ourselves. Then, statistics and data. Numbers do not lie, and it is showing us how serious the environmental problems are. Quotations. Famous sayings by people like Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and authors like Lester Brown, among others. Comparison. How important is this stage of our lives? How transformative it can be, we understand by the comparison to Copernicus' discovery about planets. Irony abounds here. The most dangerous animal on earth, not the beasts who cannot think or reason, but we, human beings. What are the themes running through this essay? Environmental crisis. The earth is sick. We need to look after it. Responsibility of humans, of humankind, people like you and me. We damage the environment. We must change our behavior. The word sustainable development. We have to look after the needs of today, but we must not destroy the resources for tomorrow. Population control. We have to control the rise in our population, especially in countries that are poor, like India. Global cooperation. Environmental problems cannot be addressed only by a few nations. All of us around the world must look for solutions and cooperate with each other. Intergenerational responsibility. We are simply borrowing the earth from our children. We are not inheriting it from our ancestors. That's the end of the lesson there for you. I do hope I have been of help. If I have, do remember to like, subscribe, and share. Remember, there might be others who would be requiring our help. Thank you so much for watching.